This car was voted Top Gear's Car of the Year in 2004 by none other than Jeremy Clarkson himself, and after 20 years, does it still stack up? The Golf GTI Mark V then. This is the car that reinvigorated the GTI name after a few duds from Volkswagen. It wasn't the fastest hot hatch of the day, wasn't the sharpest handling either, but it was the best all-rounder of the time, which is why it won the coveted Car of the Year award. With the 5th generation Golf, we also got the R32 with its quirky 3.2-litre VR6 engine with an increased power output of 247 brake horsepower. It also came with the superlative Haldex four-wheel drive system, so it sounded great from a driver's perspective, but all of that added a lot of weight, especially up front in the engine bay. That's not what you want when you should be able to throw the car into the corner with a wheel cocked in the air. This one is from VW's PR Heritage fleet, so it's in great condition, just 3,000 miles. But you can still pick up one of these cars for around £2,000 if you think like Mike Fern and you don't mind buying a rust bucket you can fix up. For a low mileage, highly spec'd VW Mark V Golf GTI, you can spend around £10,000 and still get yourself a great car. The 5th generation of the GTI marked a comeback, not just for the GTI itself, but actually for the whole hot hatch genre. Things had started to get a bit fat. Power to weight ratios had disappeared in front of our faces, and it seemed a long time ago from the heyday era of cars like the Renault 5 Turbo, Peugeot 205 GTI. Things had lost their way. The GTI brought things back to where they should be. A car that had the looks to bring real purpose back to the GTI with 200 horsepower under the hood, a proper return to form, and the dawn of a really new era of hot hatch. The EP3 Civic was always hot on the Mark V's heels, and then along came the uber powerful 225 Renault Megane Sport. You had the Ford Focus ST, even the Vauxhall VXR Astra was taking a swing at the Golf. The great thing about that era though is that it was game on for the battle of the greatest hot hatch, and there was plenty to choose from. Back in the day on Top Gear, I got to test all these cars at the same time and throw them around the track. Now the Civic actually came out fastest, but the most memorable experience was in the Golf. I did get a bit overexcited, carried on a bit much in the follow through, had a bit of a wobble that cost it a few hundredths of a second probably. My favourite car though actually was basically a stripped down version of the GTI, which was the Seat Leon Cupra. Effectively a lightweight, more simplistic version of this car, and it was slightly faster on the leaderboard. So you got a little bit of extra performance because of the lightweight. But the GTI is the one that had the class. It's got a better interior, better infotainment system. It just feels like you've got more car around you. Now, if you talk to real GTI aficionados, they'll tell you that the Mark VII has taken over the mantle as best GTI. And I tend to agree with them. Jeremy Clarkson too. He actually bought a Mark VII, so did my wife. And she actually let me drive it once. So I concur. The Mark VII is kind of like the ultimate Golf. The Mark 7.5 with the advanced infotainment system, even better. When you sit in a modern car like this, 2004 doesn't really feel like that long ago, but it's 20 years ago. But it was a cool era. It's when cars still had handbrakes, no reversing beepers, and generally speaking, no systems telling you off when you did something you didn't like. It does make you a little bit nostalgic. It was my second year at Top Gear, and there was a lot of cool stuff going on. You had the big battle between Subaru and Mitsubishi, really making good cars still before they started going for cars without handbrakes. Richard Hammond was being hypnotised by Paul McKenna, the world's angriest man behind the wheel, but lovely bloke, but just very angry behind the wheel. And generally speaking, a lot of malarkey was going on at Top Gear, and we were firing in lots of different ideas, one of which was landing a man from a parachute into the back of a Mercedes. The cool thing about 2004 is it wasn't just supercars that were grabbing our attention, it was hot hatches, because the competition in that sector was so fierce. Cars like this really came to the fore, but there was some cool stuff knocking around, like the Aston Martin DB9, Ferrari 430, and again, fairly analogue beasts with loads of performance, with just enough technology that you could really get the power down and have a whale of a time. The cool thing with the GTI is it's just that much more accessible. Loads of people can get their hands on these models. They're being made in a decent number and reliable. So 20 years on, this car is still doing what it was built to do, and it feels just as tight as I remember it back in the day. Looking back on it, what would I go for? There's plenty of competition for the Mark V GTI. There was the Clio 182, some other outliers like the MG ZR. Obviously, that would be Mike's choice. That's Mike for you.
You're 100% right, Ben. I would go for an MG ZR, specifically the 160 VVC model, preferably in trophy yellow. Now, I've sent Ben on today's nostalgic mission so I can finally chill out for once, and today's video sponsor, Beer 52, have dealt me in with a crate of craft beer. And you can get your own free case of 8 beers that you will not find anywhere else. This month, they've collaborated with craft brewers Northern Monk. This Northern Monk Rivington packs a punch at 7%. It's an IPA and apparently has a pillowy mouthfeel. Let's have a sip. Pillowy. Also included are other pale ales and a decadent stout, which has a velociraptor on the side. Or is that a Deinonychus? Dinosaur nerds, comment down below. Simply go to beer52.com/drive and cover just £5.95 postage to get 8 unique beers delivered right to your door. If you don't like dark beer, just choose the light case, and don't forget you get a couple of tasty snacks. Even if, after all that, you're still unsatisfied, you can simply pause or cancel anytime. Back to Ben in the GTI.
I don't know, there was the Audi S3. Now, I had an Audi A3 back in the day, the 1.8 turbo. The S3 pumped up the power with the 2 litre that's in this car as well. But I do love an Audi. They're slightly understated. It's like a hovercraft. That thing's just a workhorse. Take you anywhere without standing out too much. And probably the S3 with those cool alloy wing mirrors is the one I'd still go for. But looking at this now, this car is so tight and nimble. I don't know. If it was today, very happy with the Mark 7. All this, I think this is a great driver's car, and it's just got that element of retro that's really, really engaging to drive. You can really feel it through the wheel. This car was one of the first to have the electric power steering. Early days, but still very responsive, so you get a really good earthy feel through the steering wheel. Just makes you want to put your foot down. The cool thing with the GTI is the driving position. It's quite up on the steering wheel, which I like. Might be slightly at the Lancia Delta. That's the whole thing about the hot hatches. You are very much on top of the wheel and working the gears. The 2 litre turbo engine in this car is a peach. That's what Clarkson said back in the day. Absolutely spot on. It's the torque that really makes it drivable. You don't need to be in exactly the right gear, but when you are, you really get the most of it. So the Honda, quite high revving sort of toppy engine. I always preferred this. The torque, the bass off the line when you're pulling away, it's really what makes the car more engaging to drive, and it's fun. So you got plenty of juice in any situation, and it does sound good. It's got quite a boomy sound to it. It feels quite meaty, and it does pull the car around. I'm not saying it's got torque steer, it doesn't, but it definitely, you feel like you're being flung down the road by something that means business. Braking wise, also pretty strong. Again, it's enticing you to brake later in the corners. You've got the assurance of the ABS, pinpointing your stopping power, but they're quite strong brakes on the Golf and really match to its weight. Clarkson said this car weighed more than South Africa, which I think is a bit harsh. And the Mark 8 now weighs 1.5 tons, so cars are still getting heavier. This is where it's at, lightweight, nimble handling. What I like about this era is cars were allowed to roll. So you can place the car, let the weight transfer, and be in control of what the car is doing in the corner. That's something that really got phased out, especially in modern cars. They're so stiff. You've just stripped all roll out of them. Okay, admittedly, yes, it's faster on a lap time, faster around the Nürburgring, but in terms of engagement, this is more fun. And adding four-wheel drive just adds weight, doesn't add value. So 20 years on, does this car still stack up? Well, the smile on my face is probably giving a game away a little bit. If I didn't look down and look at the stereo, I wouldn't really know this car hadn't just rolled off the factory line. It feels fantastic. I'm really enjoying it. And nothing on the car has really aged. Admittedly, this is a very low mileage model that's come out of Volkswagen's PR heritage fleet, so it's been very well looked after. But it really, really feels very engaging, and definitely would pick one of these up. It doesn't feel like you're driving an old Cheddar at all. It's really kept its mojo intact. Now, what's really amazing about this car is that it actually predates the iPhone, which is really hard to imagine because it delivers all the feelings I demand of a modern hot hatch today. It's just as good now as it was back in the day, and the 5th generation GTI really raised the bar for the whole hot hatch industry. Everybody, after this car came out, had to be better, faster, and stronger. And the reliability of this model, really stupendous. So it's a fantastic all-rounder. The world was a simpler pace back in 2004, and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is really down to your vibe. But the one thing that is for certain, the cars of 2004 were fantastic. So Clarkson, Hammond and May will give you this one, definitely car of the year 2004. Any question is, which one should we do next? Let us know in the comments.